Okay, we are live.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. A last minute not emergency podcast. Not like there's been big
This is
news.
not an emergency
Unless you want to
podcast.
talk all about Stan Bowman being hired by the
That
Oilers.
I I
Breaking
mean like
news.
not particularly.
Yeah.
And like that's not an emergency for us either.
Right. Maybe for Oilers fans. A couple of the patrons are writing about how maybe now like Draisaitl won't want to resign. That would be a bad implication. But we won't talk about that here. Have we already covered the Oilers in this recap? I don't even think so. So we will get to
I mean,
the
what's
Oilers.
to
Oh, no,
talk
we
about?
did. We
They
talked
made
about
a
they signed
mistake.
Skinner and Arvidsson.
The NHL made a mistake. Everyone
Yeah.
screwed up here.
There's only, like,
I saw
32
someone say like it's
GMs.
going to be harder to like cheer for them now. Like, it was a feel good for the Oilers. Like they made it so far.
Mm-hmm.
They made some decent. They've had a good off season. There's a couple really important off seasons coming up, and now they've done this. So like, if the Oilers win, people are going to be like, it's harder to get on that bandwagon because you're rooting for someone who enabled, sexual assault. Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who's the worst to cheer for now, Edmonton or Chicago? Not that we need to get into it, but like, there's the place where it happened or the person that was the. Anyways, we
mean,
don't.
if
Okay, let's
you-
just start this show.
I would say wherever the most people who are culpable for creating the situation where that happened.
Yeah.
Like I'm if a teacher were to, yeah, like
That's
you don't get when you let this happen, you don't get a second chance.
Yeah.
It's over.
Like, I'm not saying he has
Sorry.
to go to jail.
You blew
but
it.
like, you don't need to get one of these like really rare jobs.
It's like elite club of 32 jobs. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. But hockey has this problem, and the Oilers specifically have this problem. Like, not necessarily like this problem, but like they love hiring like establishment people, like Bob Nicholson, Kevin Lowe. I'm trying to think of who else. Even Ken Holland.
All right. Anyhow. Anyway, that's my mom. Anyway. Okay. Let's do this. Yeah! Yes! Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest-running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who decided just yesterday, let's just knock out part 3 right now. Will it be the last part? Who knows? Time will tell. I'm your host, Dylan Dabrowski, and with me to continue on our journey of looking at all of the free agent signings and trades that happened over the last couple months now? It is my very good friend, the fantasy hockey robot, the Poobah prognostication, the IPP MVP himself, Brian Com. Brian, how is it going?
Hey, hi, I'm good. I'm feeling like fresh already from recording part 2. I think, like reflecting on part 2, I hope everyone enjoyed it. We always love your feedback. There's still, I think it's good for us to like be covering everything. I wish there was a little more to sink our teeth into. Like there's just so much unknown, right? So we can talk about the player that they were in their last location, because we're talking about a lot of players who are moving, and the player we can hope for them to be, and sort of at least set the baseline expectation. But obviously I just like want to drop at the start here that there's so much unknown, and a lot will depend on like we'll get little breadcrumbs of clues at training camp, and then in exhibition games, and then as we get close to the end of preseason, and opening night is when hopefully we'll start getting a really concrete sense. In the meantime, we're taking our best shot here, and I'm having fun doing it.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like we're just getting our headspace into where it can go. And obviously, yeah, these players move. Who's this benefiting? Who's this hurting? Best we can. People are obviously, we'll get more data by the end of the season. We'll know everything, but by then we'll already be done, and we've already drafted. So some people are already starting their fantasy drafts. Brian and I have just finished the pro draft of our dynasty league. So maybe some of these decisions that were made by various players affected a lot of drafters there. I'm sure a lot of other people are drafting. So yeah. Let's get into it, I guess. We're obviously proudly presented by DobberHockey.com. They broke down all these moves like a month ago already. But if you want to read their take, always really great. DobberHockey.com, and we use frozen tools all the time. But Brian, yeah, let's get into the next team here. So we finished off. We were talking about the Islanders. I was talking about my diamond in the rough with Maxim Tsiplikov, but I think we'll get to more name brand players here. As I wanted to jump over to the Carolina Hurricanes, a team that is no stranger to drafting Russian players that come over and make an impact. But we're going to start with, I guess, a Russian player that they didn't draft, but that has had his contract terminated, Evgeny Kuznetsov. He is apparently gone. Though originally I saw that he terminated his contract. He had 1 year left because he was going to go to the KHL. Then an article came out yesterday saying he might actually have some interest from NHL teams, which seems weird to me that he would terminate an $8 million contract to sign a cheaper contract and stay in the NHL. But I guess he's just really the love of the game, wants to be in the right role, or maybe that was just not even true. But anyways, that's not very impactful for fantasy, but just the latest news. Carolina did a bunch of stuff over the offseason. Obviously, they lost some key players, right? Brady Shea went in free agency. Teravainen is gone. I know Brian's never been the hugest fan of him for fantasy, but I think Teravainen was a key player on this team. They had Jake Gensel for a hot minute. He's out the door. And who's coming in to replace all these guys? I don't know, smaller names. On defense, they signed Shane Gostisbehere, who used to be in Carolina. I remember not that great at the time, though maybe now there's fewer players to compete with him for a top power play. Brent Burns is still there, but not the same Brent Burns. They also signed Sean Walker. I guess going into the season, does it look like Shane Gostisbehere is potentially a guy you want, because it seems like he might be the front runner to run that top power play at least for one more year until Nikishin finally comes over from the KHL?
Oh, sorry. Already need an edit point. I didn't realize that was the question.
The question was, is Shane Gostisbehere the front runner for the top power play next year?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just bringing up the Puckpedia. Porkpedia. That'd be a fun. Okay. You ready?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I'm ready. Yeah, it could be Shane Gostisbehere getting the bulk of power play time, but I also am not going to write off the possibility that Brent Burns actually continues to see substantial power play time. Last season, Brent Burns averaged 55% share of his team's power play minutes, and I'm looking at the last 10 games of the season, of the regular season down the stretch, was seeing 50% share more often than not. And so before we go ahead and anoint Shane Gostisbehere as the guy, I think we have to at least acknowledge that Brent Burns might continue to stand in his way. Now, of course, Brent Burns was not terribly productive as a whole last season, but he did have 20 power play points, which is good. It's not top end. In his best seasons, he had somewhere between 25 and 30 power play points, quarterbacking San Jose's unit, but 20 points is not terribly far off. And so I wonder if he's still good enough for the job. Also, I think Brent Burns, I know this is a bit kind of crazy to say. He's age 39. I think he might still be able to do better. Last season, he had a 43-point pace overall, 10 goals, 33 assists. His shooting it was down from the season before when he was shooting more than he had for a few years, but he's taken about 2.5 shots a night for 3 of the last 4 games. 3 of the last 4 seasons. And last season, one reason why I think Burns could have done better is his points participation rate. His IPP at 5-on-5 was down at 26% when it should be closer to 40%. I don't think it's because he's lost a step or anything. I think that is just some unfortunate luck, and I'll say the same on the power play. His participation was down to 50% on goals scored while he's on the ice, when the seasons prior it was 75%, 65%. So I would still I think Brent Burns could do better, and I guess I'm saying all of this when the question was about Gostisbehere.
Yeah, though I will just jump in quickly, just to say I think there is a pretty significant decline coming. I think as much as you look at he's 39, how long do you think this guy is gonna last year? I guess you're saying maybe it was just bad luck that his numbers went down, but I feel I would be very wary, and I think I just think you have to keep it in mind that we're not talking a 34-year-old, 35-year-old. This is 39. This is the end of a career. It's got to be.
And I did say his age, like up
I
front.
know. I just want to say it again and
And
again, just to say like all these reasons that you're saying maybe he'll bounce back. I think the big reason why he won't bounce back and probably shouldn't run the power play is he's an old. I'm 41, but he's an old man for hockey.
okay, and I guess my caveat is saying please don't look all the way past Brent Burns. Like Shane
Right.
Gostisbehere is not necessarily going to come in and be the quarterback from day one.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like I wouldn't like. I don't know if it's the same. Remember last year at this time, it was D'Angelo and Burns, and how are they going to share time? Who's going to be the guy? And we had reasons, I think, to go both ways. And I feel like we're still not quite out of the woods there. And part of my reasoning is that, yeah, Burns did worse last season than we would have expected, but I think some of that was poor variance. Yes, he's 39 years old, so we can still expect him to not do as well, and maybe better variance plus age still ends up with Brent Burns around 45 points, but his 20 power play points last year aren't nothing, and I think he could still do the job if he's asked to do it, which he might as the returning incumbent.
Sure. So okay, but Gostisbehere, assuming
Gostisbehere, right? Let's talk
he got
Gostisbehere
56.
for a
Yeah,
minute.
he had 56 points last year. He ran the top power play a lot of the year in Detroit when we would have expected more at Sider, but it was like no, it's Gostisbehere's turn, and I don't know. I almost wonder like why would Carolina even sign Gostisbehere, who's not known to be like the best like defensive player. You know, if it's not to run, like I mean, he there's also even strength to consider. But yeah, I agree with you that like maybe there's enough concern that you're not going to draft him high, but definitely could be like a little bit of a sleeper depending on how other people in the draft feel about him. Though, how much can a guy who just got 56 points, be a sleeper? But at the same time, I don't know. I'm never like super high on Gostisbehere.
Agree in that, I don't know that he can necessarily be a sleeper. But Gostisbehere with power play time, like he is, I think he's proven through most of his career. There have been a few years where Gostisbehere has had power play time and not been terribly productive with it. But he's on a 3-year contract with Carolina, low stakes enough. If he doesn't take over the top unit this year, it seems certain that he's there to do that for the next 2 seasons after this one. Although
Prospect people might disagree.
Who's coming up?
There's a guy in the KHL that was the player of the year, Nikishin. That's apparently going to come over.
Right. Yes, of course, Nikishin.
But we'll see. Who knows?
I think he's there in case no one else is. I think it's not a bad investment to try and make for Carolina. For Gostisbehere's power, like last season, like you mentioned, Elon, 57-point pace. The season before, 45-point pace. The season before that, 51-point pace. And I feel pretty good that this is something that Gostisbehere can keep up should he be getting the same opportunities that he did to keep it up. Do you remember, by the way, Gostisbehere's first stint in Carolina?
Yeah, I remember he had like a big game. Like his first game was something like, I'm not looking it up by the way, but what was it, like 4 assists or something like massive. And then after that, he like totally disappeared for like the rest of the season. And then
he had
time in the playoffs.
He had 4 points in his first 2 games. One of them came on the power play, or sorry, 2 of them came on the power play, and then he had 1 power play point the rest of the season, which was about 21 games. And like 9 points in 22 games, excuse me. Yeah. So, oh no, even less because I'm including this. Anyway, it wasn't great. So we'll see if he can do better this time. He didn't see a ton of minutes then, but we're looking at a different Carolina team now, especially with the loss of Brady Shea. Even in Detroit, by the way, Gostisbehere did not
Brett
see
Pesce. By that,
and
I
Pesce.
didn't mention him. He's gone too, yeah.
In Detroit, Gostisbehere, with 3.5 minutes of power play time a night, was still only averaging 19 minutes a night. So seems like a guy you bring in to be like basically what we considered D'Angelo to be, right? A third pairing defenseman at 5-on-5 who can specialize on the power play. So we'll see how it all shakes out. I think the shared situation potentially takes some of his value away, takes some of Burns' value away. I don't know, Elon, it sounds like you feel pretty confident. Like, do you have a hunch on, game 50, who's quarterbacking the Carolina power play most of the time?
Yeah, I think Gostisbehere. Like, just like to me, it's like if he was getting the job over Moritz Seider, then I feel like he should get the job over Burns. But of course, it's different coaches and different philosophies. But that's my gut feeling. But we'll wait and see. Probably, like you said, maybe neither is going to be too exciting in fantasy next year, aside from a later pick. I guess to round out the talk here. So, they did sign another defenseman, by the way, Sean Walker. You know, more of a depth guy. He's going to probably play more ice time than Gostisbehere at even strength. I don't know. Maybe if he's someone you want to draft very end of your draft, probably not. They signed one of Brian, your favorites, Jack Roslovic, who had that nice run in Columbus last year, went to the Rangers, was a top liner, just a 1-year contract. And there are some open roster spots. Like, I guess we'll have to see how Carolina ends up distributing people. But like I said, like Teravainen's gone, Gensel's gone. Maybe Roslovic gets an opportunity to, but again, he's not someone that we're going to be recommending you draft, but maybe someone just keep an eye on. Maybe he'll be one of those streamers that we talk about throughout the season is like, oh, Jack Roslovic just got 5 points in his last 8 games. Should you add him? And then Brian, then we'll dive into it then. But this is a guy to have on your radar. I guess the last question I'll ask is, we're still waiting on like Andrei Svechnikov to have his big breakout. And it feels like he's been around forever, but he is only 24 years old. Like, he's still like a young guy. Like, he started really young. He started at 18 and he's been playing every year. So it feels like he's like this like longtime veteran. It like, I have this feeling like, has he just settled in as like a 75, 80 point guy? But then I remind myself, like, he's still young. Maybe the breakout is coming. And I wonder, like, there was a really good run last year that I remember where he was like getting like multiple points, like game in, game out. And then Gensel came in and sort of Gensel ended up sort of taking the shine off of Svechnikov, right? And then Svechnikov ended up with, again, like his like typical like 70-ish point pace. Going into next season, I feel like there's not going to be as much of a concern of him like getting bumped from the top power play. Like, who's going to be on the top power play, right? It's got to be just Aho, Svechnikov, Nate Chas is still there, like Jarvis. Who's the forward that's bumping Svechnikov outside of those other 3? I'm not sure. So I think it would be cool for this to be the year that he finally does something and like gets top power play all season long and has his big breakout.
Yeah, I mean, it could be anyone bumping Svechnikov off the top unit. Like, that has happened, right? Stefan Nason held down a spot.
He's
on the
gone.
top unit.
He's gone.
He's gone.
Finally.
He's out of the picture. But, Svechnikov has kind of been getting like the Nick Ehlers treatment at times, not as often as Nick Ehlers. But your point is taken that he's still young. Svechnikov has, as he heads into his age 24 season, Svechnikov already has 6 NHL seasons under his belt. And sure, he gets injured, but like, I don't know if it's surprising to say, okay, twice he played the full season or almost, twice he played 60-something games, and twice he played 50-something games. I'm really hopeful him being healthy in the off season and like being able to train means that he can come and bring his best game coming into this upcoming season. Like, if I'm looking to see, like, was he just getting jobbed somewhere by the numbers? I don't see that being the case. The one thing that actually I raise my eyebrows at just a little with Svechnikov is that his expected goals and shots rates went down last season. He might have been passing a little more than he's used to shooting. And so I'd love for him to get those shots back. Like, after a couple seasons where he averaged over 3 shots a night, he was down to just about 2.5. He has a very consistent shooting percentage too through his career, at about 12%. So I would really enjoy for him to continue taking more shots so that he can keep scoring on 12% of them. Listen, you ask if the breakout's here. He's been between 70 and 74 points for 4 of the last 5 seasons. So that's the baseline. And within there, he's oscillated between 17 power play points and 22 power play points. If he can, and he's been on the top unit a few times, for like a 60% share over this time. So basically, top power play deployment. It would be amazing if that top unit, he's really stuck on it and they got like 70% of the minutes. I'm not sure that's going to change, though, with the same coach. So I'm going to go ahead and expect another 70, 73 points from Svechnikov. But the upside is definitely there to break out. He just needs that extra bit of opportunity. The thing is that in Carolina, that doesn't really happen. And looking at his deployment the last few seasons, I don't know that anything's going to change. But he is 20. He's 24, Elon. We know like this is a moment when lots of NHL players break out, but they're usually not entering their 7th season. So I'm very excited and interested to see what Svechnikov can bring to the table, especially because he is on our dynasty team.
Yeah, exactly. Look, Hurricanes, listen to me. You haven't won. You keep rolling out the same plan. You keep losing, even though everyone considers you a favorite. So maybe just go load up the top power play, get Svechnikov in there, make him a 100-point player. We'll all be happy. Maybe the Hurricanes will win. So that's my suggestion. But okay, let's look at the team that one of these players went to, Teuvo Teravainen. He goes back just like Shane Gostisbehere. Everyone's going back where they came from. And yeah, Teravainen's going back to the Chicago Blackhawks. Chicago had a busy offseason. They decided we don't want to be a bottom team anymore. Maybe they still will be. That'll be a fun thing to discuss. But they've brought in a lot of reinforcements to play with Connor Bedard, including obviously Teuvo Teravainen, who they signed. They also signed Tyler Bertuzzi out of the Leafs. They signed a goalie, Laurent Brossoit, who's a much better goalie than Arvid Soderblom was last year. He was one of the worst in the league. So now it'll be Brossoit and Mrazek, I guess, taking turns in net. I think that's actually a pretty decent goalie pair. I think neither of them should be a starter, and probably for fantasy, I'd imagine maybe let's just start there since that's the easy one. I think that's like clearly 50-50. Like I'd imagine Chicago is not planning on either of them becoming a volume starter. I think they're like very clearly just happy to have them, take turns. Nobody get injured, please.
I think so. Oh, sorry. Actually, as you were talking, I thought, sorry, I need another point.
Done.
Wow, dancers call off Olympics openings. Oh, what? Sorry. There's like
not
this
going to be an Olympic dance now?
Well, it says interpret this headline for me on The Athletic, which is where I was going to get the info I wanted. Okay. Dancers call off Olympics opening ceremony strike threat.
So the dancers were going to strike, but now they aren't going to strike.
Oh,
so we
that's
will get dancing.
They made a threat.
Phew.
And they've called off the threat. Oh,
so we're going to get dancing.
Threat? I don't think you call off a threat. You call off the plan, not the threatened plan.
This is like the least interesting news ever. I didn't even like if there wasn't going to be dancing, I don't think anyone would have cared. Just play a video of someone dancing if there's no one that wants to dance.
I mean, I think a lot of people care.
Maybe.
People care about the Olympics opening ceremony.
I guess. It's never been a thought of mine. The only like sporting event, like entertainment that I think I've ever cared about is like Super Bowl halftime show. That's always fun. I'm trying to think of another time I've cared about. I liked that whole thing. Well, not liked, but it was funny how that person sang the national anthem at that baseball all-star game was really terrible.
Josie was watching that. I didn't I hadn't that sounded very funny.
But it's like it turned out not funny anymore because then she posted afterwards that like she was drunk and now she's going to rehab or something. So
that's not
takes the fun. It was more fun when it was just like she was a bad singer.
She took the fun right out.
Yeah, like we were just all laughing about how bad she was at singing, and then she has to be all like, "Oh, it's because I have like a problem," and then it's like, "Oh, well, now I have to feel bad for you."
Yeah.
So
now you're disappointed that you have to feel bad for her.
Yeah, I can't like share it anymore. I can't be like, "Oh, that'll be a fun meme forever." Now that we can just make fun of the bad singing.
So if you want a fun bad anthem, Carl Lewis,
the runner.
Yeah.
He sang the anthem somewhere?
Okay,
I'll look
one.
that up.
I used to listen way back, like a long time ago, to the Jim Rome show on occasion. And like he had like a soundboard ready to play like Carl Lewis national anthem bits and pieces. And like once a week or every couple weeks, he'd just like start talking about it. I don't even remember the event.
We only have 45 minutes left, by the way.
Okay.
This show, so we should probably go. So my question was,
I
was like an easy softball. Is it just going to be clearly Mrazek Brossoit trading starts?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, let me come in differently.
Nice.
I think that's fair. I mean, the deal with Brossoit is he's always been a great backup. We've never really seen him in sustained action. And I kind of wonder, actually, if he could be the better goalie between he and Mrazek. Mrazek is someone, I've always kind of supported, but I've been frustrated in that support because he's good inconsistently or he's good and gets hurt. Looking at the numbers from last season, Mrazek actually had a good year. He played 6.5 save points above his expected Fenwick number at 5-on-5, but the year before that was not so good. And the last couple years for Brossoit have been lights out in very limited action. Like, we're not talking David Riddick numbers from Brossoit, but we're talking close to David Riddick numbers.
Okay, wow.
The thing is that, also, one thing for Riddick, and I'm not planning to go all the way down this road again, was that I pointed out was his quality start percentage, like 70%. And that's where Brossoit has been for 3 of the last 4 years, or last couple, he's been at 70% in limited starts, like only 32 starts. So being 70% quality in that is still very impressive. But we need to see it happen more often. Before that, Brossoit sort of like wavered back and forth between 65 and 45% quality start. So I would love to see more of what Brossoit has to offer in a 10-year NHL career. He's entering his age 31 season in a career that started with a game he played. He played 1 game in the 14-15 season. He has a .911 save percentage and only 140 games played. So I'm curious to see what he has to offer. And I think this is, a situation where whichever goalie is better is going to get to play. Last year, I also found the Chicago net a little hard to predict. There didn't seem to be a really clear routine or system in place for determining goalie starts. So I'll also be watching in the first few weeks to see if I can discern a pattern there between Brossoit and Mrazek. But I'm hopeful that we see, like, Brossoit has never played more than appeared in more than 24 games in a season. I'm hoping we see like 30 to 40 for starters this season from Brossoit and get a sense. He and Mrazek are both around for another season. Soderblom is on the way up, and we'll see how it all shakes out. Oh, what, you've soured on Soderblom?
I think that the Chicago, I don't have the names. I was just reading
Drew
recently
Comesso.
Yeah, they have they have a couple guys. Gajan, I think, is another one. I think that Soderblom's really going to have to step up his game to be in the picture there. Maybe he'll be an NHL goalie somewhere else, but I think as of now, the plan, from what I've read, is like Mrazek and Brossoit for a couple of years until Comesso and Gajan are ready. But maybe Soderblom is a stopgap at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, so of course the problem for these goalies is they're playing for the Chicago Blackhawks, who aren't the best defensive team, though they've brought in some, I guess, reinforcements, right? So they signed Alec Martinez, very good for blocks, as we know. They've signed TJ Brody. TJ Brody's still in the league. Like, I know he's been on the Leafs, but it's like we used to talk about him on the podcast so often. Remember, Brian, when he was on Calgary? We were so like, annoying. Why is Brody on power play 1 and not Dougie Hamilton and not Giordano or whatever? I remember it was like a common topic, and now he's totally disappeared from my mind, but signed for another couple years. So good for him. And then, Chicago has, Seth Jones. They have Vlasic. Alex Vlasic, who just signed. Like, these are like supposed to be good defensemen, right? That Kevin Korchinski, high draft pick. Connor Murphy, good for hits and blocks. So I've just named 6 defensemen who are supposed to be good, as far as I know. So I don't know, maybe that'll help. And then, like I said, a lot of new forwards coming in, right? Bertuzzi, Bedard, and Teravainen could be a pretty exciting top line. Taylor Hall is still there. We haven't talked about him at all. I don't even know if he's healthy. I guess we'll have to see if he's even going to play. But theoretically, if Hall is back, Kurashev, I don't know. Foligno's still there. He got extended. So, now I'm just talking in general about, like, can Chicago not be a terrible team? But specifically, let's look at these 2 big signings in Bertuzzi and Teravainen. Like, playing with Connor Bedard is huge. All last season, we like Kurashev had himself a really nice bounce back season for his career, getting a lot of time to play with Connor Bedard. So I'm curious to know, like, Tyler Bertuzzi, he went to the Leafs last year, and he, wasn't that great. 43 points in 80 games. I guess his worst season of his career, but he obviously wasn't getting top power play time. Got to imagine there's a top power play spot in Chicago for him. And, like, probably same with Teravainen. And obviously I'm just guessing a top line, but I think that would be a pretty exciting spot for both of them. I guess we'll have to wait and see how the deployment looks. Teravainen actually didn't have that bad of a year last year, 53 points in 76 games, but obviously not the heights when he was back being like a 75-point player, 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, I'm curious to know, are these signings clearly just like improvements? Like, has the fantasy value of Bertuzzi and Teravainen gone up enough that they're on your radar for fantasy drafts next year just because of the potential exposure to Bedard and a likely top power play spot? That's not a bad top power play. If Hall's there, Hall, Bedard, Bertuzzi, Teravainen, Seth Jones, that's fun.
Yeah, it's an actual unit. So I think I'll start with Bertuzzi, who we saw get favorable deployment in Toronto last year and still put up just a 44-point pace. That was with only 6 power play points, 5 of which were goals, by the way. So I guess good for him. But that was with low power play deployment. So listen, if you tack on, if you assume that Bertuzzi's on the top unit, and you assume that he can get near 20 power play points next season, then that alone takes Bertuzzi to being like a near 60-point player, like in the 55-60 area. So I think that's one reason why, to get interested in Bertuzzi, because like you said, he could get exposure to Bedard. One, he also might not. And two, when he's been exposed to stars recently, he wasn't able to do a whole lot of 5-on-5 scoring with it. So we'll see what kind of role that Bertuzzi gets to play at 5-on-5 and on the power play. But I think what this does, what his move to Chicago does, is it improves his upside from being someone who's like, 45-50 to being like 55-60. And, Bertuzzi's ice time over the course of his career, or at least the last couple seasons, I should say, was low, 16 and a half minutes. When he was in Detroit in the 2 years that he averaged, one full season, he averaged a 75-point pace. He played almost 20 minutes a night. So I'm going to be interested to see how much ice time Bertuzzi gets in this setup. You also mentioned Teravainen, who's back where it all started, Elon. I'm sure you remember. Like, Teravainen was someone we were talking about on Chicago in the early days of the podcast. He started his career with 3 games in 2013-14, and then his first, part of a full season was in 2014-15, where he didn't do much, and then he continued not doing a whole lot until he got to Carolina, had a few great seasons, and has been a famous topic on the podcast over the last couple of years as somebody who is basically a power play one, relevant or bust. And it's been bust the last, I'm going to say 2 seasons. Okay.
He did have a 57-point pace last year.
I'm going to tell you why.
Not terrible.
I'm going to tell you why. 2 seasons ago, he had a 45-point pace with only 11 power play points. Last season, Teravainen had, with the same amount of power play time, 17 power play points, and he had an 18% shooting percentage to get a career high 25 goals when he's a career like 10 or 11% shooter. So that's not gonna, like, he's still, listen, I still think he needs that top power play. Like, if I were to regress him in Carolina, I'd say, back to 45-50 points. Now that he's in Chicago, let's see if he's utilized differently and has another route to achieving his upside aside from top power play. I'll hit the reset button on that take a little bit, but of course, it would still be really nice to see him get some top power play deployment. So it's fun to see him back in the first jersey that we got excited about Teravainen's name, and we'll see where he can take it from here. Elon, if I'm picking between, I don't know, I'm good. Well, I'm gonna ask you because I don't know between Bertuzzi
versus and
Teravainen. Like I think they're 2 sides of the same coin. Really, I'm not sure there's somebody I prefer a whole lot more than the other.
That is a fun. I don't know why I didn't really think about that. About as far as who do I draft first? Well, Bertuzzi is. So what's their cap? So Teravainen's making 5.4 mil, and what's Tyler Bertuzzi making? Let's let that be the tiebreaker there. Who they're paying more? Tyler Bertuzzi is bringing it up right here. 5.5. Oh, 5.4 versus 5.5. I'm going Bertuzzi. What do you think? Okay. Oh, he's gone. Okay, edit point. Matt, I think that links that you share here don't show up because I'm not seeing any hyperlink. So maybe you'll have to share that in the Discord. I think it's like a security thing that YouTube has. Brian just. Ooh, do I have I have a message. Sorry, BRB. Oh, well. Makes sense. Maybe he had a doorbell. I'm going to guess doorbell. It's possible he'll come back and not want to say what it was because it was private, or he'll come back and say, and my prediction is let's play fantasy Brian reason why he left. And my guess is someone was at the door. What's another possible one? I mean, hopefully it's not fire alarm. That would be a good reason to like jump off really quickly, of course. Then you wouldn't even write sorry BRB, I'd imagine. What should I do? Oh yeah, I was gonna fix up. So I finished. We finished the pro round of the dynasty draft that we're running. Then all of a sudden started skipping all of the picks for the minors draft, and I think it's because I had the setting wrong where I didn't let it so that picks go to minors. So I just like changed it now. So now I can go and see if I fix it. Fantrax, you got to get everything like just so, otherwise it does like crazy stuff to you. There's no like not really a warning here, but I'm gonna try now to restart the draft now that I said that picks can go to minors spots. Let's see if now it will allow the picks to happen. Okay, so I'm refreshing the draft room here. Oh, Brian's back. Ooh.
Hey.
And the draft is going and not skipping picks. So I fix it. No one cares, but just if people are curious.
I'm so glad you fixed it.
Works now.
Okay, so what was your answer?
My answer was Bertuzzi because he makes 100,000 more. He's at 5.5 mil and Teravainen's 5.4.
Okay, can I come in on that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's really funny, and I think that speaks to the fact that we really don't see much of a difference between them. Okay, follow-up question. Is Taylor Hall definitely beneath both of them? He's making more. He makes $6 million.
Yeah. I would say Tyler Hall. Sorry. I would say Taylor Hall beneath those guys, but impress me, Taylor Hall. But at this point, I just wonder what he's got left. He's starting to fall into like a Pacioretty type of territory for me. Just like you miss so much time with injury, where I just want to give me some news items telling me he's in the best shape of his life or something, and then I can start caring about Taylor Hall again.
All right.
They also signed, by the way, Mikheyev, or no, they traded for Mikheyev and Lafferty from the Canucks. Obviously, like bottom six guys, but just to round out the discussion. But okay, let's go to the team that Chicago got Laurent Brossoit from, and that's the Winnipeg Jets. And there's actually not that much to talk about with the Jets. So I just thought I'd bring them up quickly. So Brossoit's gone. They've signed Eric Comrie and Kaapo Kähkönen, I guess, to challenge as the backup spot for Hellebuck. Clearly, like one of the least interesting spots in fantasy hockey, the backup goalie on Winnipeg. Maybe who's the lead? Okay, so there's Tampa Bay's backup is also always very uninteresting. I guess it's Jonas Johansson now. Is there another team where the backup? Because even last year, like Jonathan
Nashville.
Quick. Oh yeah, Nashville. I liked Lankinen, but yeah, when he played, he was good. But yeah, why hasn't anyone signed Lankinen yet? What's going on?
Vancouver.
Winnipeg should sign him. Why is Winnipeg dealing with Eric Comrie and Kaapo Kähkönen when Lankinen is sitting there? Much better. Let Hellebuck rest. With these guys, I think Hellebuck's in line for another 60-game season. Anyway,
the New York Rangers. I just want to make sure that I'm naming all, like, while everyone's screaming at their phones. You didn't mention, you forgot.
Well, the Rangers, I was saying, like, Jonathan Quick had that run. He looked good.
For like 3 games.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, good for him.
So anyway, Brian, is it worth giving a quick take on Comrie versus Kähkönen, who's going to be the backup on Winnipeg next year, or is that just a waste of everyone's time?
I mean, we might as well. What else are we here to talk about? Like,
we have some bigger names.
Well, we're kind of in the dregs. I mean, I guess I'll repeat my standard Kaapo Kähkönen take, which is just that I don't think he's great. And Comrie, I hoped could be really good. And last season, I don't know if you remember at the start of the season, and this is how honest we are. I was really talking him up. Like, you were like, Devin Levi is going to be the guy. And I was like, well, don't count out Eric Comrie. And then, of course, it was Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen who had like the most sustained success in the Buffalo net. But I thought that was finally going to be Eric Comrie's year after basically having to play second fiddle his whole career and being claimed on waivers like 3 gazillion times by several different teams. So I hope he's happy going back home to Winnipeg. And it doesn't really matter. But if you asked me to pick one, I don't know. I think I have a soft spot for Eric Comrie just because of, like, I read this story once about how, like, all the waiver acquisitions and like the havoc it wrought on his life. So I'm kind of cheering for him. So Eric Comrie.
Sounds good to me. But I know people are gonna also scream at their podcast, being like, Brian, why do you keep saying Luukkonen? I know it's fun. It's fun to give that extra.
Luukkonen.
I think
All
it's
right.
just Luukkonen.
Okay.
That's what I think.
All
But we're
right.
past that. Remember back in the day, all the
Ugh.
feedback we ever got was just that we don't pronounce player names right?
Yeah. So do you think
Yeah.
we do better, or do you think people have just realized it doesn't matter?
I think that we do better. I think that we're trying. I think there's just a couple players that are just hard to get over. There's another, like I said Riddich last episode, and then you started just calling him Riddick, and I think you were right about that
Yeah.
one. So hard to say. But okay, let's continue on here. Oh yeah, Winnipeg. I wanted to say, so Tyler Toffoli's gone. Sean Monahan's gone. Is this like, I'm trying to think of like what's an interesting question. I guess like we're still waiting on Cole Perfetti to get, like, now there's going to be a new coach, right? Rick Bowness is gone. Like Perfetti had a really great start to the year last year, if you recall, and then was starting to get like benched and like, low ice time. But now at this point, if we look at who Winnipeg has, they have Scheifele, they have Connor. There's no more Wheeler to deal with. I'm just trying, like, they have Velarde and they have Ehlers. Okay, so I guess they still have enough people that they could like bump Perfetti down the lineup. But I do wonder if maybe this is a guy that you can grab late in a fantasy draft. He's not on anyone's radar at this point, probably. So someone I have my eye on as like, with Monahan and Toffoli gone, but they weren't there a couple years ago. But and Ehlers might get traded. So I don't even know if I have a question for you there, but throwing out Perfetti as maybe a good target later in the draft that could surprise.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing to do. I'm just trying to get a sense of what kind of opportunity. Like, I think there's like even though it's a thinner roster, so you've got Scheifele, Connor, Ehlers, and then
Ehlers doesn't go on the power play. Velarde will be there.
Yeah.
I think that the four on the power play are Connor, Scheifele, Perfetti, Velarde.
Yeah,
So it's a good
probably.
spot.
Except So.
Or do
Yeah.
we have to have the convo that since there's a new coach? Who's the new coach, by the way?
Yeah, well, that's where I was gonna go.
We're gonna talk about Ehlers getting on the power play again, like we do every year.
I truly don't. I'm done playing that game in trying to predict. I know, like, this is a big year for Ehlers, by the way. Makes $6 million. He's 28 years old, and he's about to become a UFA. And so, like, either free Ehlers in Winnipeg or free Ehlers elsewhere, I think. And Ehlers will have some say in that based on how well he decides to play or he's able to play, which, conspiratorially might make one think, well, Winnipeg's not going to juice his value and put him on the top power play now. Like, they're going to want to, what's one more year on the second unit? Perfetti, by the way, had a pretty solid sophomore campaign, 44-point pace with 11 power play points from the second unit, which is decent. So you pop him on the top unit, and you have a draftable top six forward. I'm just trying to figure out if he slots in. Like, I think in Winnipeg, like, I'm not writing off. I don't know. I just worry that it might be top line or bust. And I know, like, Ehlers is on the second line, and you have Velarde. So, like, that's enough of a second line, and Perfetti can land either there with Connor and Scheifele, assuming that that's how they're gonna, set up the lines. I just don't know if he's there yet. Like, if Perfetti's able to, like, carry as much as he might need to carry. But I have to say the early returns in his career are good. Like, his shooting rates at 5-on-5 are good. His expected goals rates at 5-on-5 are good. He turns, this is age 22 season. So Elon, I think Perfetti is still, as a former 10th overall pick back in 2020, I think he's still on breakout watch. Like, it could happen this year. It could happen next year. So I think you're right to bring attention and say it's time for us to consider him more than a 45-point player. We just need to see him play to really get more of a sense of what his upside really could be.
Yeah, and again, like when you look at the full numbers from last season, it's such like you really have to parse it out because he had 17 points in his first 21 games, and then at some point after that, Rick Bowness decided he hated him, and so it's really going to come down to if the coach likes him or not. It seems because he clearly has the talent. Okay, let's move on to the team that Tyler Toffoli signed with. The San Jose Sharks. And this is another Chicago situation, both in that these are basement teams, but also with some, but the Sharks are going in another direction, right? Like Chicago, I was talking about, they've got all these new players in to play with Bedard, and they're like the older, but they brought in Bertuzzi, they have Teravainen, like Alec Martinez, Mikheyev, Lafferty. Like, I think I saw someone tweeted that Chicago's like one of the fifth oldest team in the NHL by average age now, even though they're in a complete rebuild. So it's clearly just because they've brought in all of these veterans. Nick Foligno. San Jose is excited exciting for next year potentially because of all the young guys who are going to come. Like we saw Will Smith has announced he's going to play. He's not going back to college. Celebrini, of course, their first overall pick. They're the future of the franchise. But like Will Smith is also apparently right up there, right? It's two of the top prospects in hockey right now. So they're both going to be there. That's huge just by itself. Then you got William Eklund, who is not nobody. Maybe he's ready to like step up and be better. And then we've got our two darlings from last year, Granlund and Zetterlund. Remember how they just like all of a sudden out of nowhere became like pretty solid for like the fantasy playoffs in the second half of the season. So you put all those guys together, and like I said, they've signed Tyler Toffoli. Okay. This is something. It's interesting. This is a matter of just like who knows, like what is Celebrini, what is Will Smith, what is even like Eklund at this point. But it could be a fun team, and I guess it's exciting because you bring in Tyler Toffoli. I could see a situation where he's not even on the top power play, depending on how things shake out. Though I imagine they signed Toffoli specifically because they want him to help Celebrini. I find this team very interesting. Like I have no idea how to predict who's going to be on the top power play, like what the lines are going to be. Maybe the most like player I think I'm most clearly excited about in terms of upside compared to what people are thinking is maybe Jake Wallman on defense, who they got in that weird trade where Detroit like paid a second for San Jose to take Jake Wallman, and all of a sudden now maybe is he like top power play defenseman? They have like some young defensemen like Thrun and Makamadulin that eventually will be there, but yeah, it's a lot of mess in San Jose. So what's my question? I don't know, Brian. You're a pro. You'll be able to untangle this and say something interesting, I'm sure.
Well, they also, I was going to say they also have Kalen Addison, but they didn't qualify him, so they don't have Kalen Addison.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. I don't know. It is a mess. I think what I was trying to do was sort of count up how many players they have. So what's interesting is they have Hoffman, LeBanc, Zadina.
No, Hoffman these guys are all not coming back, right?
That was going to be the end of the sentence. Yeah. Hoffman, LeBanc, Zadina, and Barabanov are all UFA. Zadina definitely didn't get qualified, so I'm assuming he's even less likely to come back. Thomas Bordeleau is an RFA. I'm not sure when San Jose's offseason is going to start after all the signings they've made. According to Puckpedia, they have almost $15 million worth of cap space available. And I'm just curious to know which of these guys they plan to sign, or if they plan to sign any of them.
None. Well, I think we have a lineup. Brian, I'll throw it at you right now.
Yeah.
I'll give you 16 forwards.
No, I don't want 16 forwards. I'm gonna look for 6 in the top 6. We've got Couture, Toffoli, Granlund.
Couture. I forgot about Couture.
Yeah,
Is he
you
healthy?
did mention him.
What's his deal?
I think he's hoping to be healthy, but I don't know that it's.
I wouldn't bank on Couture, but I guess anything could happen. Couture, okay, latest on Game Day News. Couture working out hard, feeling good, per Greer. Plan is to start skating in July. That was June 24th. We haven't retweeted anything about him since then. Yeah, that's like that's the Taylor Hall. Another connection between Chicago and San Jose. They both have a Taylor Hall. This one is Couture. Will he play? Is he good anymore? Who knows? But I feel like they don't need him anymore. They've got Will Smith and Celebrini as their top 2 centers. Couture can play in the bottom 6.
Okay, so I've named 3 forwards out of 6, and then Celebrini's 4, Zetterlund's 5, and then
was so good.
Who?
Granlund.
I mentioned him already.
All right, tell me. Start at the beginning again. Sorry.
Okay. Logan Couture, Tyler
Okay.
Toffoli, Mikhail Granlund, Macklin Celebrini, William Eklund. So there's 5.
Okay, Smith.
Oh, and Fabian Zetterlund. So there's 6
Zetterlund, and
with
you've got
Will Smith, right?
7.
And I'm just gonna toss Alex Wenberg's name out there as someone who
Wenberg.
could play in the top 6. So there you go.
So
My big question here is we saw Granlund and Zetterlund thrive last season as the guys in San Jose, and I'm wondering if more depth and breadth in the lineup helps them or hurts them, right? If they have to play, if it becomes less about them and more about others. I think so that's I'm not drafting them where they were at their production last season, basically only for that reason, then again, they could actually perform still up to that, and they might be helped by having some more support in the lineup. So that remains to be seen. That's my big San Jose question mark. You asked me to find the question. That's my question in San Jose. And obviously, we all also want to know how ready is Celebrini, and to that extent, how ready is Will Smith, and how ready is William Eklund, and how ready is Shakir Mukhamaluddin, and how ready is Henry Thrun. Like, there's a lot of how
Bordeleau you mentioned.
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions that I'm not sure will be answered in camp. Some of them will be answered in camp. I don't know that many will be answered in preseason. But this is it. I think there's a lot of wait and see going on in San Jose, and so that's what we'll continue to do. There might be some later, like mid to late draft value here, but you might go ahead and draft Mikael Granlund and decide 3 weeks in that he's actually not going to be worth holding on to this season, or Tyler Toffoli. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's my question: like outside of Celebrini, who knows how to predict, and Will Smith, like who are you drafting first out of Toffoli, Granlund, Zetterlund? I guess Couture. Like, is there some name that jumps out at you as like the most sure thing? Is it Toffoli just because they just signed him, so they must clearly want him?
No, I was gonna say Mikael Granlund, to be honest. I just feel like he's the steadiest, and you know what? I think this might also be. I guess there's two ways you can look at this. Like, I think Granlund is the play to avoid downside, right? If I'm just trying to like minimize the chances that I'm gonna have a total dud who's not at all useful to my team, I think I'll go Granlund. If I am going for upside, and it's not Celebrini or Smith, you know what, Elon? I think I'll go. I might go William
Toffoli.
I might go William Eklund.
Eklund. Well, I also wanted to count him as the Youngs also.
Oh, okay.
But
So
sure.
then I'm with you on Toffoli.
I think that I was reading that they're planning on playing Toffoli with Celebrini. Of course, we'll see. 4 years times $6 million. So that's someone you're bringing in to be top power play and top six, I would think. And Toffoli is coming off not like as amazing a season as a couple years ago when he had 73 points in Calgary, but 55 points in 79 games with New Jersey and Winnipeg. He'll be interesting, I think.
Yeah.
All right. So next, let's go to. I don't have a good like connection here, unfortunately. Who do you connect with San Jose? They haven't had really many people coming and going of interest. But let's just go to Columbus because this is another team. Here's another, I guess, Couture Taylor Hall type that had the ending that you would want. The happy side of it is Sean Monahan. You hope it goes that way. A guy who was injured for a while, seemed like his career was maybe taking a downturn, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Sean Monahan had himself a real breakout last year. And the Habs came out the best, right? They took on Sean Monahan, got a pick to take Monahan off of Calgary's hands, and then they swapped him at the trade deadline and got another pick. So that's pretty sweet. And now Sean Monahan is back to being a star player, at least in terms of how he's getting paid. He signed himself, 5 years or 6 years, 5.5 mil cap hit. So that's a pretty solid now play for him. And he's got now the rest of his career set up. He's going to get paid. The question is, how good is Sean Monahan after his 59-point season? He goes to Columbus, reuniting with Johnny Gaudreau. So that's a lot of fun. Where's Yuri Hoodler? Is Hoodler out there somewhere? That would be fun if he can complete the set there. You didn't laugh, so I imagine you're just not listening. Because that was a great reference.
I'm not laughing because I'm trying to find out if Yuri Hoodler is long retired. Wasn't there a health thing for him at the end of his career? He last played in Dallas, 32 games. He had 11 points. I was wondering if he was still somehow active, and he's 40 years old. He could be active in some European league, but he is not.
Yeah. Yager is 52, and I saw that he's planning on playing next year.
Yeah. But 5 years from now, I won't be Hoodler's 45, so he could be playing in some European league.
That's true. Okay, so we're back to Columbus. This is kind of another San Jose situation, right? We've got all the Youngs. We've got Fantilli, who got injured last year, didn't go the way a lot of us hoped. A lot of people thought Fantilli could potentially be, I guess, not a Calder candidate just because Bedard skewed everything, but in that conversation. But he's going to be ready to go. They've got Chinnikov and Marchenko and Kent Johnson and Cole Sillinger. So a lot of good young players, and then also some fun now veterans. You've got Gaudreau, you've got Monahan. Boone Jenner is still around. So I think that Columbus is an interesting team. Oh, they also have a guy named Patrick Laine, apparently. He's, I believe, still in the player assistance program. So we'll see if there's been talks. Well, maybe he'll get traded, but he can't get traded until he's out of the player assistance program. So we don't know if Laine is going to come back and how good he can be. But I do this every year, Brian. I look at Columbus and I see like I think this could be a this seems like a pretty decent team, but I guess that it always tends to fall apart. They just signed a new head coach in Dean Evison. So maybe that's gonna help or hurt. I'm curious to get your take there. But as far as a question for you, I guess my question is like, I guess we got to start with Sean Monahan. Like, what is our perception of him? If assuming he does go and play with Gaudreau, then so Fantilli can play with whoever. Fantilli can play with Marchenko, and I don't know. But I'm assuming for fun, let's say it's Gaudreau and Monahan on the top line, or you call it the top six, and on the top power play. Do you think there's any chance Monahan can repeat his 59 points from last season? Can he do it again?
Sorry. I was looking up Dean Evison. Impact. Whew, what an episode. A lot of edits. A lot of edit points.
That's okay.
Okay. Can Monahan repeat the 58-point pace? That's the question, right?
59 points, yeah.
50.
Oh, that's so funny. He had a 58-point pace with 59 points because he played 83 games.
Oh,
That's
is
rare.
Funny. Can I mention that?
Do what it's on. The mic is yours. All right. I asked is can Monahan
but it was your observation though.
You steal it. Go for it.
Okay.
50. I just said, can he repeat the 59 points from last year?
Fun Sean Monahan fact, actually, that you and I both just realized is he had 59 points last season, but only a 58-point pace because he played 83 games. It's pretty rare that a player scores more points than they're paced for. I guess you have to play 83 games, which happens on occasion. So way to go, Sean Monahan. You showed that pacer who's boss. So now Monahan has done this 2 years in a row. 2 years ago, he did in just 25 games. So it's like, could he have kept it up? Not sure. Last season, look, he had 21 power play points. That was really helpful for Sean Monahan. He's still like younger than you. Like he just turns 30 in September, and I'm looking at his 5-on-5 production last year. It seems mostly sustainable, except that his shooting percentage was high. And it shows up in his total number too, his 15% shooting percentage. It's one of the higher ones in recent years. He was a 15% shooter for his first several seasons in Calgary, and then that fell off. And it shows a little bit in his expected goals rates too. So I'm not ready to for sure say he's not going to be able to score 26 goals on less than 200 shots again next season. I think it's less than 50% chance of like odds are against it, which is why maybe I'll still say 55 points in Columbus. Also, I don't know, Elon, like who's going to score more than 55 points in Columbus this season? Like, to me, that's the question. Like,
we have a new coach. Maybe it's all different now. There's a lot of good players, like I just mentioned.
Yeah. And so I'm also trying to figure out if Monahan fits on the top power. Like, I think he fits on the top power play, but I'm not 100% certain. I think there's enough uncertainty for me to want to just say Monahan is like a 50-ish point player, give or take. And then with good deployment, yeah, I think he can work his way towards 60. And with poor deployment, I think he'll be working his way towards 40. So if the question was, can Monahan do it again? The answer is yes, with good deployment and maybe with a touch of good variance. Otherwise, no. But I also don't know that he falls he's been a free agent at the last couple seasons. I don't know that you want to look past him at the draft. In a deep enough league, he might be worth a late round pick just to see where he starts the season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's definitely worth drafting Monahan. I think I would. Brian, who would you draft first between Monahan and Fantilli? And also, by the way, Boone Jenner used to be a guy who we all were really excited about in fantasy because he was the top line, top power play. I'd imagine this is all bad news for Jenner in terms of his fantasy value, right? Like now he's likely going into the season as third line center behind Fantilli and Monahan.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I was saying I think this is all bad news for Boone Jenner because he's likely pushed to the bottom six now with Fantilli and Monahan ahead of him.
I don't see the only reason that Boone Jenner is pushed to the third line is because he's the most capable at playing a shutdown role. Elon, I'm not sure. I don't think that's true. I don't know if Fantilli plays the wing instead, so that Jenner stays in the top six. But to me, he's the heart and soul of that team. And putting him out of the top 6 mix doesn't seem like the direction that they want. Like, he's the guy who like leads, he's going to set the tone, he's going to like lead by example. I'm not sure he can deliver on all of that intangible and like tangible value from the bottom 6. And I think they're like Columbus more than anything to me seems to need like a steady hand and stability, and Boone Jenner can offer that better than anybody else up and down the lineup. So I'm going to guess that Jenner holds on to a spot in the top 6, and maybe Fantilli's on the wing or Monahan ends up on the third line instead.
Interesting. So yeah, that'll be fun to watch. I could see like Columbus does look deep in terms of you can make a top 9 of like 3 good lines, kind of what LA has done in the past, where like Fiala's been on the third line, but can you really call it a third line with Fiala there? Like just again to repeat, like let's say Line A comes back, you've got Gaudreau, Monahan, Line A, Fantilli, Marchenko, and Chinnikov, and then Jenner with Sillinger and Kent Johnson. Like it's kind of like maybe those are all kind of even-ish lines, but. Yeah, so that'll be a really fun team to follow. And like again, San Jose and Columbus to me are the most just like I have no idea how the lines are going to shake out, and it's hard to even predict. Like at least with Chicago, I'm like it seems to make sense to me that Bedard will be with, at least one of Bertuzzi and Teravainen, if not both. Maybe Kurashev is there, and then one of those other guys go. But like I feel like these teams that could really just go in so many directions. So we'll see. Let's move on to the next team here that I've got. Detroit is a team that we talked about sending Jake Wallman away. I don't really get this, actually. I guess they wanted to make room. They needed to clear cap space, and they used it to extend Patrick Kane. We should definitely talk about him. They signed Tarasenko. They signed Cam Talbot. They signed Eric Gustafsson. So clearly, these are moves of a team that's ready to go for it, right? Like I guess the rebuild is clearly over. This is a year that Detroit is going to try to finally make the playoffs. They almost got in last season. I guess we've got to start with Patrick Kane, right? Because this is a guy who we got wrong, right? When we were like thinking like when he comes back from this injury, don't expect him to be anywhere near the star that he once was, or maybe not even like fantasy relevant. But we were wrong. He had 47 points in 50 games. That's a 77-point pace in his 50 games. So a really impressive run for Patrick Kane last season. And that was without like a summer of training and like without a training camp. Now, I'd imagine Patrick Kane is training, doing everything he can to be even better for next season. And now he's locked in to a contract extension. It's 2 years, or no, just 1 year, $4 million. What do you think? Is Patrick Kane going to be a 77-point-ish pace guy again? Maybe he could be even higher. Or like, are you concerned? He's 35. He's not Brent Burns level of old, but he's definitely not a young guy at this point. Curious to get your current take on Patrick Kane and his upside over in Detroit.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know. You said he didn't have training camp and whatever, and I actually kind of wonder if that was helpful for him. Like, it's probably better
Really?
to be with the team and like to start the year and to get set up, but. Like he's old, he's coming back from an injury. He played 50 games last year and like without a whole lot of stress on his body before the season, I assume. And maybe that like was part of the reason that he was able to put up a 77-point pace last season. Another way he did it was he had the best shooting percentage that he's had in 4 years. He shot 13%, which was probably about in line or reasonably expected within Patrick Kane's like peak, but over the last 3 years before that, Kane had only been shooting between 7 and 10%, and his expected goals rates didn't rise with that shooting percentage, which tells me that I think he probably scored a little more at 5-on-5 than we should have expected him to, and so that's one reason that I see Patrick Kane like having room to regress. His points participation was a little high. It's possible he can keep it up there at 80%, but I might regress him a little bit there too. I'm going to say that Patrick Kane is probably, I don't know, like I'll put him around 65 points, which, not a superstar anymore. We already know that as he heads into his age 36 season with a lot of mileage on him. So I'm going to, I think that's it for me. I still wonder in Detroit, like you have Dylan Larkin as your top line center. And if you're not playing with him, there's no obviously great second line center option. Like, yeah, they're paying big money to Andrew Kopp and JT Compher. JT Compher can like hold up a second line, but I don't think he's a whole lot of value added. So those are my sort of apprehensions re Patrick Kane, as well as injury risk. So he's not someone who's really high on my draft list, but I could see him still being able to pace for around 65 points.
Yeah, you know what? I like everything you're saying makes sense, but then I'm also like I don't want to make the same mistake I made last year. I feel like, but it really depends on where people are valuing him in your fantasy drafts, right? Like if he's falling because people are worried about all the things you said, at some point maybe there's good value because I think he has upside to be point per game still. Like he was basically that last year. And yeah, well, it depends on deployment and depends on how, but like assuming he has a good summer of training, I think there is upside there, which at the point in the draft where he's going to get drafted, I don't think that the players being drafted around Patrick Kane will have that point per game upside. But also at the same point, he has like a lot of downside as a 35-year-old with an injury history. So it's going to be a bit risky, but I think it could be a fun pick that could pay off big time in 1 year leagues next year. Detroit now, yeah, they could roll like Larkin, DeBrincat, and Lucas Raymond on the top line, and then yeah. So then who does that leave? Exactly what you said. Comfer playing with Kane and Tarasenko. Is Tarasenko someone we're totally done? Tarasenko to me is like a Taylor Hall, but just not injured. Like someone who I used to think was amazing, and now I just really feel like not interested. He's really like lost a lot of his cachet as a fantasy asset over these past couple of seasons. Last year he started in Ottawa, then he ended up in Florida. Got himself a cup, so I'm sure he had a good time. But it was just a 55-point season overall, 59-point pace if you put it together. It was 55 points in 76 games. Is that where we're at with Tarasenko? Like maybe even lower. Like I don't know. I kind of don't even want to draft him as a 60-point guy. Maybe more like 55. I don't see a top power play spot for Tarasenko. I think it's going to clearly have DeBrincat, Larkin, Raymond, and Patrick Kane.
If the Wings have one like top dog power play unit, right? Which we don't know if that's going to be the case or not. Tarasenko's 5-on-5 scoring has actually been pretty steady throughout. We're just seeing like a drop in power play usage the last couple seasons, where he's had, instead of his usual 20 something or like low to mid 20 power play points, Tarasenko had 14 a couple years back. The first year he was traded from St. Louis, and the last year that he started with Ottawa and finished with Florida. I think that lower power play deployment has also impacted how many shots he's able to put on net. He used to be a big shooter. This is, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago now. But he hasn't been as much of a shooter at 5-on-5 or on the power play. So that's why with Tarasenko, I'm kind of with you, Elon. And by the way, with Patrick Kane, I have to say, like, I was wrong on him last season, and I am reluctant to be wrong again. So I guess I'm kind of doubling down on still not believing in him. But I like all you had to say still. For Tarasenko, though, yeah, I think he's at about a 60-point pace, and that allows for some top power play minutes, but maybe not necessarily the whole season through. And I think this sort of 2.5 shots per game that we've seen the last couple seasons might be where he sits instead of where he peaked back between like 2014 and 2019, when he was a like 3.5 and almost 4 shot per game player.
Okay, and I guess we've spent some time in Detroit, but we need to stay a little longer. Yeah, because the goalies, right? They have 3. They've got 3 pro goalies signed. They signed Cam Talbot in free agency, who's coming off a very strange season with LA, where he was incredible for the first half or so, and then kind of really fell off at the end. There was a stretch where he was really terrible, then bounced back a little bit. Ended up, all told, with a .913 save percentage, which is pretty impressive for a 37-year-old Cam Talbot. No one was expecting that. But now, yeah, 37, going to Detroit. And so then they've got Ville Husso, who's been quite the bust since he was signed as a free agent. I don't know how much of that has to do with just him not being as good as they hoped, and how much of it has to do with the injuries. He had only 19 games last season for Husso. In those games, not great, right? .892 save percentage. And then they have Alex Lyon, who's the opposite of Husso. He's someone that no one expected to do anything, and he's supposed to just be a minor league guy that comes up to play when their goalies get injured, but then he keeps playing so well. He did it in Florida a couple of years ago, and now last year with Detroit, he did it again. He really had a strong end to the year and helped Detroit push for that playoff spot before, I guess, the wheels kind of fell off finally at the end. At the end of the day, it was a .904 save percentage, which isn't incredible, but a lot better than Husso. So we'll see. I don't even know if Husso is fully healthy and what the status is. Assuming they go into training camp with all 3 of these guys ready to go, I guess we have to assume they're going to start with Cam Talbot as the starter. Is that where that's where my head's at. And then I could see it really just shuffling around all season long as these unreliable goalies keep getting hot and cold.
Call me crazy, but I
I'm
think
ready.
Alex Lyon should be the starter,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Seems like it.
Like no one of that three between Lyon, Husso, and Talbot has performed better over the last couple seasons as Alex Lyon has. So, and like Alex Lyon was there for the Wings when they needed him too. I don't know. I feel like that's reason enough to believe that Alex Lyon could be the opening night starter. But my guess is that they're going to go into camp and say it's an open competition. Whoever plays the best is going to get it. And to be fair, all these guys like Alex Lyon has probably had the best and longest runs, and Talbot, yeah, he had a good run in LA where he was just I think playing fine with very good protection. I think it like yeah, if I had a hunch, Elon, I think I'd go Alex Lyon because he's disappointed me the least compared to Talbot and Husso over the last few seasons because I've invested in Alex Lyon the least, so he hasn't had a chance to disappoint me. So I think it's going to be an open competition at camp. I will say, the same way you said about Kemper in LA, like they made an investment, right, for a reason with Talbot, and so it seems like maybe they'd want to trend towards him. I'm curious to see how it plays out. I wouldn't want on draft day, though, to really make any substantial investment in any of these goalies. One, because it could be a rotating cast all season, and two, because neither one has proven themselves to be particularly reliable or capable of holding down a top line spot.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Not touching any of these guys. I will predict Cam Talbot is your opening night starter. I think it, like I said with Kemper, I don't think that's up for competition in camp. He signed 2 years, 2.5 mil. But I could definitely see middle of the season starter. That's a whole other story because I don't know how long Talbot will be able to, who knows? Anyways, Brian, I guess we've hit our cap here. Okay, let's do one more team really quickly, and then we'll end part 3. And I guess we're gonna have to do part 4 some other time. I'm having a good time though. We can just this is gonna end up being like a 6-part series, but we'll cover everyone. Let's go to the Rangers really quickly. They didn't do much, but the one big move that the Rangers made is they traded for Riley Smith. And if you recall last year, Blake Wheeler was in the picture, and he was playing a top line spot with Zibanejad and Kreider. I wouldn't be surprised if now Riley Smith is going to go into that role. Like, unless you're expecting Capo Caco to finally have his breakout, and I'm definitely not banking on that. I could definitely see, they've got their line that's really solid. Trocheck, Panarin, and Lafreniere. You're not breaking that up, at least not to start after their playoffs and everything. But I think there is a decent chance for Riley Smith to get into the top 6. I think top power play is very unlikely for him. Unfortunately, you would think like even Lafreniere gets that top power play ahead of Riley Smith. So I don't know like what our upside really is for Riley Smith, but he is worth mentioning as someone that maybe is worth a swing late in your 1-year leagues next year, coming off one of his worst seasons in a while, only 40 points in 76 games, but that was on a terrible Pittsburgh team. Before that, he was a really solid 55, 60-ish point pace guy on Vegas forever. Riley Smith's 33 years old. Maybe he has a little bit of juice left. If he's playing with Zibanejad and Kreider, I think it could be okay. I think he can hit that 55, 60 points again. What do you think?
Yeah, what's impressive about Riley Smith in Vegas is he was having these 55, 60-point seasons while being deployed on basically power play 1B or 2, and like having very little power play production after his first couple seasons, where he had 14 power play points. The rest of his time in Vegas, he did not get near that and still was a 55, 60-point player. So good on Riley Smith for being there. In Pittsburgh, I'd say, like you said, like he was on a bad team. I would say the flip side of that coin is Riley Smith couldn't find his way into favorable deployment on a not good team, right? He wasn't getting good top power play time. He couldn't stick consistently in the top 6 either. So those are 2 things I'd be a little concerned about with Riley Smith now with the Rangers. I hope he's still got it. Like you said, he's 33 years old. He's not that far removed from being a pretty reliable player. And one fun Riley Smith fact is in the last 6 seasons, he has had 2 or more shorthanded points in all of them. He's had 4 shorthanded points in 4 of his last 6 seasons. So if you're in a league with that category or as a points bonus item, you might enjoy Riley Smith in that respect, although he had none in Pittsburgh. So this is excluding his time in Pittsburgh, where he played less on the penalty kill. But I wonder if maybe that's a role he can play in the Rangers. I'm not, I still think after last season, he's mostly like a top end free agency kind of player. Maybe he's in the Sean Monahan class, Elon, of somebody who you could try and take that chance on, but it's kind of boring, like doesn't have a whole lot of upside at the end of your draft, or just make sure he's on your watch list for an early season stream.
Yeah, I feel like Monahan has a much better chance at top power play, so that would be a reason definitely to take Monahan ahead of Riley Smith. But yeah, just a guy to keep in mind. And okay, since we just mentioned Pittsburgh quickly, we'll end the show here. I don't think there's even anything to talk about. Pittsburgh stinks. They had a really boring offseason. I don't see anyone of interest. They've lost Riley Smith. They've signed Blake Lizotte, Anthony Beauvillier. They acquired Kevin Hayes in a trade where they, got a pick to take him. They got Grzelcyk on defense. So this is just a team with, it's the same as last year, but everyone's a year older. Crosby's in a contract year. That'll be interesting to see if he gets extended before the season starts. But yeah, I'd assume it's more of the same. Like we'll have Crosby, Malkin. I don't know how much is left for Malkin. He had a real down year last year. They've got Rust. They've got Raquel. They've got Karlsson and Letang. And you could hope that like things gel better and Karlsson gets more power play points and he can do what he did a couple of years ago. But I really don't have faith in anyone in Pittsburgh at this point. And I'm worried about Crosby, not even because of his age, but just because of the cast around him. It's just looking sadder and sadder.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. It's like I want to be excited about a team with Crosby and Malkin and Karlsson, and I and I'll add Letang. Like Letang's 37, Malkin's 37, Crosby's 36, even Brian Rust is currently 32, and I'm not sure when his birthday is. Like I don't know if this is age 33 season offhand or not. Yeah, things are just...
No, we're good. He turned 32 in May.
Okay.
So belated happy birthday to Brian Rust.
Yeah, and like their goalie situation isn't great. There's nothing they have only $3 million of cap space. I don't know what happens here. Like especially with Crosby, basically indicating, like I remember reading, it's been a while since I saw this, but like that he's going to sign another like $8.7 million contract for another few seasons because he's really committed on like being a Penguin for life. But yeah, I don't know. Like Malkin has 2 years left. When do you sell him for parts? And Karlsson has 3 years left. Can you sell and Letang has 4 years left. It's wild. Like there's a lot of... I'm curious from Penguins fans if you're as down on the team as we feel. Like you still have like some version of Crosby, Malkin, Rust, and you have Letang and Karlsson. So like they could be good. They could have some exciting moments, but on the whole, it doesn't seem like there's enough here.
And even to make matters worse, they don't even have a great prospect pool. So it might be some rough years coming up for the Penguins. We'll see next year if some of these older players can bounce back a little bit. I'm not going to be rushing to grab any of these Penguins in my draft. And that includes Crosby. Like obviously, if he falls like the second, third round, at some point, I'm happy to get Crosby. But everyone else, I'm like, unfortunately have to be down on Erik Karlsson, which is very sad. I don't know, Brian, if at some point we're going to have to rebrand the podcast, but we'll see.
No, like we just don't. Like I'm not sure why. Yeah, like it's just at a time it made sense and it harkens back to that time. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't think we should. I think that's a bad idea.
All of our cupful divisions are named after teams that Karlsson has played on. And then at some point we ran out of teams. So then we started naming divisions out of like Karlsson's coaches throughout his career and some other things. It's all Karlsson related. Are we going to also keep all these cupful divisions talking about Karlsson forever? I guess so.
I don't want to fight with you on air. So
not fighting. I'm just discussing.
Well, no, I feel like we're on different. I feel like I'm on team keep, but I feel like you're not. So.
No, nostalgia's fun. I'm with you. You're more of a branding expert, I think, than I am, anyways. So, but the listeners chime in.
Yeah,
if you think. But maybe Karlsson gets another 100-point season next year. I'd love to see it.
Though you know what, the one thing I'll say is like the Pittsburgh top power play unit still could be really good. So
Yeah.
like that could be a place that Eric Karlsson, assuming he's there, could put up 25 or 30 power play points. Like that is still possible, which will make it like I think he could be. I think he's going to be a little underdrafted this year, and so you might be able to get him. I think you might be able to get more out of him than you invest on draft day. That's my hope, but also you might not.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think he might get he might also just get overdrafted because of his name value. Like, like a lot of it comes down to like Malkin, like Malkin fell from 83 points 2 seasons ago to 67 in a full season. Like Malkin used to never stay healthy. Now he's played 2 straight 82 game seasons, which is incredible for him. The first one was awesome. And last season, a big dip. It's really just a matter of, is he dipping is he in a dip that will continue, or can he stabilize as like a 70-ish point guy? So that'll obviously make a big difference. But I think we're good on the Pittsburgh talk. And Brian, we're done with part 3. We still have some teams to go. I think this is a good stopping point. Thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoy this. Sorry for the long break between parts 1 and 2, but hopefully we've made up for it with a quick turnaround between 2 and 3. And I don't know when we'll do 4, but we'll do it at some point soon. And also, we've got a bonus episode coming to you later this week. Should I keep it a surprise? Let's just say me and Jeremy have got something cooking. That's going to be fun. So stick around. Make sure you're subscribed to Keeping Karlsson. If you're not, then you just auto-download those episodes. What if you're just thinking like, oh, I want to listen, but now I'm in a tunnel and it won't download? Just get it auto-downloaded. It'll be on your phone no matter what. And of course, thanks to our awesome patrons. We've been having a lot of fun in the patron community. Check it out, keepingkarlsson.com/patron. For all the perks, you can still register for the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. Registration deadline will be around the start of September, so you still have some time. You don't want to miss out. Okay, we always get people that come to us like,
kkupfl.com to find out how.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we get people mid-September like, oh, did I miss it? Like, yeah. And then we usually find a way to squeeze them in. Let's be real. But still, we want you to try. We don't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah, but you're not guaranteed a spot.
Not guaranteed.
We can't promise we'll squeeze you in. So if you want to get in, you've got to register and be a patron by September 1st.
Yeah.
kkupfl.com. All the details.
Brian loves that website. It's pretty good. Have we updated it? We have, right? I know we updated the rules of Cupful on kkupfl.com. Did we actually update
as far as I know,
the banners?
It's entirely up to date.
Okay, before we release this, let's just go check that to make sure. But okay, thanks everyone. Brian, you're awesome. Oh, beautiful. Cue the outro music. Read us the credits.
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dabra Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Paul, Roman, Don, Michael, Jordan, Brian, Patrick, Aaron, Philip, Ivan, Sammy, Andrea, Zach, Tom, Ryan, David, Ricard, and Patty. Thank you to Kevin A. Barrick, our Cupful coordinator. Thank you, Elon and Shams, for your work over at GameDayTweets.com. Thank you to BrandonWeeb.com for our logos. Thank you to Pat Roach for our music. This episode was researched with help from Dabra Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dabra Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Puckpedia, The Athletic, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, and Hockey Data Base.
Great job as always, Brian. Always a pleasure to get on the mic with you in these fun afternoon, morning recordings, something different. Okay, I hope people liked it. And while we schedule part 4, what do you recommend our listeners do as they await that next episode drop?
Please keep doing all you can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Sweet. All right, thanks everyone. Don't tell my boss that I've been doing this for the past 2 hours. An hour and a half. It's not that bad. It's a long lunch.
You'll work a little extra to make up for it on the back end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If my boss is watching, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do today.
Yeah.
So, all right. See you, everyone. Bye.
All right. Bye.